the last great blues migration. All of them except now Buddy Guy are gone. And that it's a great example of somebody who has bridged the gap between their instrument and what it is they're trying to say. It's sharing the personal experience of somebody, whoever's singing it, and then it becomes identifiable or relatable to whoever's listening to it.
Hello and welcome to Season 1, Episode 13 of the Blues Jam podcast. And this week I have gone international. I have had the pleasure of chatting with Erin McCallum, a Canadian singer-songwriter. And I chatted with her all about her career, about finding authenticity in the process of songwriting and performing, and we talked about her work as a journalist, where she writes all about the blues culture and the blues scene. So I hope you enjoy this episode. It was great chatting with her, and as always, please stay tuned for notices of blues jams coming up over the next couple of weeks or so. Thank you. Enjoy. May you introduce yourself, please?
Well, my name's Erin McCallum, and I am known mostly as a blues singer and songwriter from Canada.
Brilliant. And to give some context, although I always feel a bit shy about asking this question, and you don't have to give details, just a bracket is acceptable. Are you willing to give an age bracket that you fall into?
Oh, yeah, sure. I have no problem with that. I am 44 years old.
Cool. Okay. Brilliant. Like I say, that helps to give some context as to
yeah, for sure,
maybe what some of your influences were, or some of the things we can talk about. And so,
sure.
with that in mind, can you remember? And I know you're quite vocal about these things. I've seen some of your posts up on Facebook. What was one of the first times? We'll start with general music. What was one of the first times that you thought, yeah, I want to play music as well as listen to it?
Okay, so that happened for me when I was actually really young. I kind of always knew that that was something I wanted to do. And when I was younger, of course, you get into the music that's around you. For me, that was rock and roll.
Right.
And that's the music I played for a really long time in my short life. And I had come across, an interview with a rock and roll musician, and they said, it all comes from the blues. So I started looking, and I went, wow, there's all those cool parts that I really love in rock and roll. You can hear them all the time in blues. So that's kind of what got me there.
So you say that was quite young, and that you were influenced by the music that was around you.
Yep.
Again, also to give some context, where are you geographically based, and where are you from?
I am based in Ontario, Canada. And this is where I've lived my entire life. And I don't know if it is, adding more context, but I started playing music when I was, a teenager, and found the blues when I was in my teenage years as well. So, as far as it goes, it's been decades, and it's been fruitful in Canada.
And it sounds like you're saying, like the blues came in really early into your musical journey. Then was there a particular sound or an album or an artist that you found that really switched you on to the blues?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember this one clearly. It was BB King, and not having a ton of exposure to blues music. And he was pretty accessible. His music was pretty accessible. It was after The Thrill Is Gone had come out. So his music had reached some commercial, mainstream venues, if you will. And so I went to BB King, and that was immediate with me. The connection to that, it just went, yeah, okay, this is where it's at. And it started from there.
Wow. Well, what a place to start as well with BB King.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a very, as you know, this is at least the third, fourth, fifth time that I'm hearing and saying that this is quite a common thread. Also about like sort of getting into rock and roll or sort of rockier, heavier music, and then sort of reverse engineering it back to the
Yeah.
blues. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens frequently. And I think part of the reason for that is not only is blues really considered to be a niche market or a niche genre, but almost all popular music stems from it. You can listen to rap, you can listen to disco, you can listen to country, you can listen to rock and roll, rockabilly, funk, and that's where it all comes from. So I think anybody who wants to look at the origins of what they might love currently, they're going backwards and they're going to end up with the blues.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be something that's recurring as a theme, and not only is it a theme, as you say, it's an actual reality. You know, we can, as you say, you can easily trace all these guys back. You know, anything in the heavy metal genre coming back to Black Sabbath, and then Black Sabbath coming back to bluesy material, anything, anything, and then all the grungy sort of stuff having its influence in the metal and rock scene, the rock and roll scene, most definitely. You know, Elvis Presley. When you listen to Presley's stuff, it's very clear there's a big, massive blues influence there.
Oh
Um,
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
and
Yeah,
so
you can
what?
listen to all music, R&B, which the name R&B has really changed.
Mm,
The music has changed, and you can look at rap, and all divisions of it. You can look at uh, house music, hip hop, even gangster rap. You look back at all of it, and that's
mm,
really an early foundation.
yeah, yeah. There's really something about it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, just so massively influential. You're absolutely right. Um, which is flattering and encouraging in a way, and also requires some humility because it's like we're dealing with the root, we're dealing with the origins right there when we deal with blues.
Yeah, I mean it's always an interesting thing. I find most people, especially now, because if you look at, let's say, the artists of the last great blues migration, all of them except now Buddy Guy are gone, which
Mm,
puts the music in a way where you have to look, and it seems to be that most people look because they're already liking a genre. And so it becomes important for people to want to find out where their music comes from.
right,
It's
yeah.
not the same. It's not the same as it used to be. It used to be you could go out on a weekend and there was a blues band playing that was really just first generation of those players that were in that last migration of the blues players. And I'm lucky enough to know a lot of guys that could walk into a bar and shake hands with Howlin' Wolf. But I'm not one of them. I'm a little too young for that.
Yeah.
So I have to draw upon what came before me, whether it's some of the guys I play with that can pass that down, or if it's in a recording. It's just looking back always. Yeah.
Right, yeah, and so you've alluded there to playing with some of those guys. So tell us a little bit about your um, you also talked about you were hearing rock and roll. You got into blues. At what point did you start playing?
Well, professionally, I would say that my professional record really started with blues. Um, you're young and you play in rock bands or whatever bands you're playing in when you're young, and you're not really looking at it as a viable occupation or livelihood. You're just doing it because you love it. Maybe you have some stars in your eyes. So I would say professionally, my record started with the blues, and I've been playing in the same project now into its 22nd year. So, you know,
Right.
uh, I'm lucky that way.
And what instruments do you play?
Well, I try to dabble in a few things. I'm predominantly known as a singer, but I also play guitar, and the odd time I play a harmonica. And outside of that, that's pretty much what lands on the stage.
Right. So I'm always interested in people's journeys with their instruments. Like, did you get lessons to play the guitar, or did you pick it up yourself? What's, like, what's your musical ear like? Things like that. Like,
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, I've never had a music lesson in my life. I've been playing guitar for about 30 years, and I'm self-taught. And so, there's probably some stuff I could know how to do better, but much like the blues, it's, I lead by my ear and I lead by, whatever inspires me, passionately speaking. And so I am what you would refer to as untrained.
right, okay. Untrained but deeply passionate.
Sure, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, yeah, okay, cool, cool. And you're saying that you're mainly known as a songwriter
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
singer.
that's right. Yeah. I've been lucky enough that I've put out 5 all original commercial, like full length albums. And I'm lucky enough that my songs are played in 63 countries around the world. And there are a lot of great songs out there for sure that don't get heard. I'm lucky enough that mine have been, and I've had some good success. I managed to be acknowledged with an international songwriting award for the title track of my 4th album, and so lots of songs to be put out in the world.
So when was your first album out?
The first full length album, would have been released in 2005, I believe. It's been a
Fine.
long time.
Yeah.
Been a
Yeah,
long
so
time.
so 19 years ago. So you were like, yeah, you were 25.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Before that,
Wow.
we there was even an EP recording, and so, but as far as like all original full length album as we come, I don't even know if they call them albums anymore. Let's call it a recording. That yeah, 2005 was the time for sure.
Wow. Okay. Well, a slightly different landscape back in those days as well. There was no like Spotify. There may not have even been YouTube, if I remember rightly, or
That's
certainly
right.
not
Even
accessible.
Facebook didn't even exist till I think '07. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you were doing it like the original way. Were you out gigging and touring at those points as well when
Oh
you
yeah.
were? Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely out on the road. In fact, out on the road quite a bit, I would say, for uh the first 10 years of being in a blues band full time. The first 10 years, I would say, uh looked a lot different than the next 10. It was back in a time where if you uh recorded an album and had it all pressed and ready to go, you sell them right off the stage. You went on the road in order to sell that, or in order to get on the radio. And it's kind of opposite to that now. The way things work, where music is more of a brand, where people will want your music if they already have an idea of who you are and they already like you. Well, it used to be you play live, and if they like you, they will pick up your album.
Right. Right. So what sort of, I mean, those first 10 years, what sort of size venues were you playing? Well, when you say you're out gigging, well, what are we talking about there?
Well, it kind of grew. I don't think anybody starts off on, major stages, but, you know, the beginning of that first decade was bars, private parties, and anywhere, anywhere. We would play anywhere. We'd play on the street. And by the end of it, yeah, we were playing large festivals, international shows, larger stages and events. And so that first 10 years, there's a lot of growth there.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are missing out on on what you're just talking about there, because I'm guessing, and please expand on this if I'm correct, that there was a learning curve going on during those 10 years where you're out on the road in terms
Yeah,
of,
there is.
yeah, especially in terms of honing your skills both as a musician and as a singer, which I acknowledge are both the same things, but both on your instruments and with your voice, I'm guessing.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of things that you learn on the road, that you cannot possibly learn woodshedding in a rehearsal room. Um, for everything from refining your craft and your skills to learning how to entertain. There's a big difference between executing a song effectively and entertaining an audience. That's two totally different art forms right there. And
Could you
and
could you
yes, I think something's lost. Yeah.
could you say some more about the difference between those two things? Because I'd really love to hear about
Well, sure. When you're playing live, you have to you're helping create an experience for everybody in the room. And that is its own art, especially for somebody who's the front person in the band. You have to be engaging. You have to give people a good time and a memorable time. And that's not always going to be in the form of how well you um, play the notes. That's already expected.
that.
And there's something different between, putting a song on the PA from a CD or an MP3 and having that experience live. It's quite a bit different. You can make it personal for people.
Would you describe yourself as an extrovert person? Was it easy for you to get out on stage in front of people, or what was that like?
That's a very interesting question. I don't consider myself to be an extrovert. However, being authentic when you're on the stage, I think makes being engaging easy or relating to an audience easier. Is if you're just being your authentic self on stage, and you can't really be in a position where you need to gain the nerve because there's nothing about it that's contrived.
Yeah, that's a really. I think you've just hit on a really important point about that being authentic and about how that will come through in your performance in one way or another, if you're authentic or if you're not.
Yes, and I believe you can't really fool a blues audience. Like if people are there, or any audience for that matter. If you're there, let's say in an extreme situation, the singer is reading the words to a blues song off of a piece of paper. How can you possibly convince other people of it if you yourself are not convinced? Like
Mm,
especially a blues audience, you really can't fake it. You can't fool somebody if they'll know it if you don't mean it.
right, which then brings us very nicely to your songwriting. Is that so? I mean, have you ever looked back over those songs from the first album and thought about them retrospectively from where you are now?
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, you'd be in trouble if you weren't constantly trying to grow or learn. I do believe that the lyrically, I stand behind the messages in the songs for sure. Musically, I can see 100 ways in which songs that I've written could be written better or written differently. But uh, I do believe I stand behind every song, and I've given a lot of thought to this. I think the reason is because the songs I write tend to write to the common ground of the human experience.
Right.
Like I'm not writing a song about, let's say, my personal bad day in my hometown with my family and name their names. Some people do that and it works. But I'm kind of writing in a way that everybody could relate to if they've ever felt the same way. And I think for that reason, I can stand behind all the lyrics.
Right. Nice. Nice. Yeah, I'm always interested in someone's in where these songs and where the lyrics come from. I think as you say, for some people talk, some people write from their own experience, some people write from a collective experience. Um, but that again, that word authenticity comes up. Um,
Yeah, and I think there's, there are also people who write in a style in blues music too. They write in a style that is very groove oriented, or they're just fun songs, and that's okay too. Um, I can think of songs both in blues and outside of the blues genre that don't particularly touch on anything but inspire a good time. Um, so depending on your style, makes a difference. There are lots of guys that write on a groove, and the groove is king. There's nothing particularly wrong with that. But I think if you're going to do a lyrics first approach on certain songs, you probably best served writing in a way that is able to connect with someone else's experience.
right. Is that? I mean, do you have a particular methodology? Are you lyrics first, then put the music around, or which way around is it for you?
For me, it can come either way. Usually lyrics first, because
Right.
that's what comes easy to me. Um, Words are easy. That part's easy for me. And music, I know there's still so much to learn. I don't know every groove, and I don't have the world's best hands as a guitar player. So usually, yes, it's lyrics first.
Right. Okay. Okay. And so that's where, and is that where you are? I mean, you've just said you don't have the world's best hands. So do you concentrate more on the lyrics and the singing than on the guitar playing?
Well, the Erin McCallum band has always been a vocals first approach, just with really, competent music behind it. But it's always been vocals first. And I don't think that's something that was thought out intentionally. I think it's just going with the flow of what comes naturally.
Right. Nice. Yeah. Nice. I'm getting,
Yeah, it's always been a thought of mine. Sorry about that. It's always been a thought of mine that, again, in the vein of authenticity, that if you are just writing your truth, you know, you're probably best served in a blues going in that direction.
right. Yeah. That's what I'm picking up. What I'm picking up is that there's nothing about what you're doing which you're doing for someone else. It,
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like you have a clear direction, a clear, uh, a, a clear want to do this for yourself, for your own, for you, and for what you feel like doing. Would that be fair?
It's fair to say this. Like, so I'm doing what I do naturally. That's what's coming out of me. Um, the passion or my soul or whatever you want to say, that is coming out exactly without reservation. But I do it in hopes that it touches other people, because I think we're all the same in many ways, in the way we feel, or a lot of our life experience. So if I can in some way say what I'm saying musically, and someone else says, "Hey, me too," that's a good thing. That's the common ground I think we really are all on.
There's a lot of power in that simple expression of, "Hey, I feel the same way. I get that." Yeah.
Yeah, I
You also,
think it's part of
yeah.
that shared experience. Yeah, and it's authentic, right? Which is, in my opinion, I think that's a cornerstone of this genre of music. I really believe you
Mm,
cannot fake it.
yeah. Yeah, it's not manufactured in any way. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right. Yeah.
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 We,
Like if you listen to BB King, let's say, because we talked about him earlier, if you listen to BB King, uh, that's the truth. He bridged the gap between his instrument and what he was trying to say, and it created
mm,
a whole voice. And that guy never once did I see him call it in. Never once did I hear it. Every time BB King was playing, he had something to say, so he said it.
mm. Well, like I commented on something today, and I really mean it. I remember very distinctly the first time. Granted, not amazingly long ago, but I knew of BB King, but granted, I hadn't really heard live at the Regal. I remember the first time I put that on and just went, "Oh, oh, this is where it's at, isn't it? This is it right here." And this, and then to have that realization, "Oh, wow, this is live." He hasn't overdubbed this. He hasn't stood in a recording studio and said, "No, no, no, scrap that take. Let's do another take." He's out there doing that. And in the
That's
days when
right.
they, and probably in the days when they weren't overdubbing any live albums, a lot of so-called live albums nowadays, even from the 80s and the 90s, they sort of overdubbed some of the bits where, perhaps the guitarist missed a note or didn't do a solo very well, and they stick another solo in and hope nobody really notices. But yeah, I mean, crikey.
Well, I have to say, I'm lucky enough. I was able to see BB King live more than once, and that
Wow.
was the experience. Yeah, that's exactly what you're hearing on those recordings, those live recordings. That is the experience live, and that's why I use him as an example. Not only is he, really identifiable. Anybody from any corner of Earth can say BB King and find it or know it, or you name it. Very accessible, and that it's a great example of somebody who has bridged the gap between their instrument and what it is they're trying to say. And
Mm.
it's as authentic as it gets. You can't call that in. You're not thinking in triplets or how you're strumming or counting to four. You're just saying it, and it's authentic.
Yeah, he's right there in it, isn't he? There's no, like you say, yeah. Yeah, I like that expression about he's not calling it in. Yeah, he's not just going through the motions. He's not just, oh, I know how to play a solo, it's fine. Yeah, he's in it. He's right there. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just it, right? So it's that honest expression, and as a result, so moving. He's a guy
Mm.
that changed and influenced and defined a genre, and it permeates today. I mean, I was saying this to somebody very recently, that there's even guitar methods. They call it the BB box, which I don't think is really fair, because he was actually capable of playing some very complex things, and his phrasing, a lot of people get it wrong when they're playing.
Mm.
But to influence somebody just with the voice of how you're expressing yourself, it's pretty formidable.
Mm. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that is a massive influence.
Yeah, and he didn't say, I know what I'll do. I'm going to contrive a formula. No, that's just the way his voice was, and he was honestly and authentically putting it forward. And I think that's the mark of, he's the benchmark, really, in my mind. But there it is. It's explained with no words, that authenticity. That's where it comes from. You can't script that, and you can't write that down. You're just doing it.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. There's yeah, yeah. That level of feeling, yeah, like you say, you can't script it, you can't manufacture it. It's either there, you're either experiencing it or you're not.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. And
And I think it's infectious too. Like, if you can inspire somebody, whatever, I don't know, because I'm not him, but whatever BB King might have been feeling when he's saying, uh I've been downhearted, baby, ever since the day we met. Our love ain't nothing but the blues. When he's singing How Blue Can You Get, and he's playing what he's feeling, you know, if someone else is able to feel that same thing and relate to it, there it is. That's exactly it. You can't figure out a formula for that.
Yeah, that's really interesting because for the first time, I've just suddenly thought, as you were saying that, about like and I know it's a word that's banded around quite a lot nowadays, but the therapeutic value of the blues, like for you to actually feel a feeling instead of just denying it, instead of trying to like do whatever it is to get rid of it or to push it aside, but to actually feel it and experience it.
Yes, and I think when it's a powerful thing when there's music, either let's say from myself or music from, let's say, BB King or whomever it is you're listening to, singing about something that you feel understood about, then it's
Mm,
okay. It's okay to go through it. Everybody wants to be understood. Everybody wants to be understood. So, you know, if there's some music out there where there's someone else that says, yeah, me too. And they can go through that process and actually use a song to go through it. Some
mm.
people don't have all the words, you know. Some people just feel a certain way, and the song makes them just go, yeah, yeah, me too. And there you are. You have company in what
Yeah,
maybe you could be very alone in. You never know. Heartbreak is lonely, you
and
know.
I mean it gives a whole new different meaning to being heard, doesn't it? If you're a musician, uh, you know, and somebody comes to you and says, "I really heard what you just gave us there." Not only did you know, like I felt the same, I feel the same way, and I'm really grateful that you've given me someone else to relate to.
Yeah, it's the best thing ever. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be recognized for what I do in professional settings, like awards or nominations and stuff like that. But the most fulfilling thing is exactly that. When somebody comes up and says, I get it, or, you know, I was really going through a rough time. You know, I've had people say everything from, that's my wedding song to you saved my life. And you say, yeah, okay, now that's powerful. That's more
Wow.
powerful than an award. And so it's exactly in the line of that. Like, to cycle back to earlier in our conversation, when you asked, you know, I get this, you said, I get the sense, you know, you're really doing this yourself. Yes, I'm doing it the way I do it for sure. It's what comes out authentically. But I hope it's someone else's experience that they can relate to. And that's exactly what I meant when I said that is we really are all on common ground. And if I can somehow have an experience that is also someone else's, I think there's power in that.
So I really love what we were just saying now about being heard through your music. Um, but I understand that's not the only way that people can hear what you have to say. You also do some journalism, is that right?
Yeah, I feel like in my own little way, if we're going to be part of this collective, this blues music collective, I think part of it is also telling the story of other people. And I'm lucky enough that I have a post-secondary education in the field of journalism and media studies. So I thought, well, I can always put my formal education to use. And I've been writing music investigative articles for probably about the last decade, focused exclusively on blues and blues musicians.
Nice, nice. So what's the blues music like in Ontario and Canada as a whole? And is that where you specifically sort of work?
That's where we do the majority of our work is in Ontario, Canada, but we're not limited to it, that's for sure. One of the reasons is there's a pretty robust music community. Considering the population of Canada, it's actually a pretty decent robust community. There's many festivals that are blues friendly, and there are some societies and organizations specifically in Ontario that help people access uh, whatever the music through either their own listenership or as an artist. So, in that respect, there are avenues to certainly pursue it.
Nice. Okay. So that's a thriving scene of both like gigs and what's the jam scene like? What's the blues jam scene like?
Well, there are a lot of open mics and stuff like that. Toronto has fairly regular open jams. And so there's a scene for that as well. I find that a lot of artists who are what you would consider to be professionally touring or touring artists, what usually ends up happening is there's a conglomeration. We all know each other on the scene in Canada. And so what usually happens is we'll all be in the same place at the same time, either on tour or whatever. And there's room for collaboration, either on stage for a specific show, or lots of times there's a collaboration on an album. So as
Nice.
far as putting it out there, jams, yeah, they are there. But there's also a lot of opportunity to get playing together in other ways as well.
Okay. And do you have any personal experience of going to blues jams? Was that ever anything that you were into or that you did or do now?
It's funny in a way because it's always nice to play with your colleagues in music. Back in the earlier years, we used to use a blues jam as an opportunity to audition players, and so it has its place in that respect. But when you're busy and you're playing dates, one thing about Canada is that festival scene in the large performance venues is very seasonal in Canada because we do have winter. Things kind of slow down when the snow is flying. So the part that makes it difficult when you're a touring artist is finding the time.
Yeah. It's all well and good, yeah, talking about like there's a regular Friday night jam, but if you're off touring and you're not about, then you're not going to be able to make it, are you?
Yeah, but there are other ways too. Like there are what fairly regularly, at least around where I am, there are regular matinee shows. And so there will be a host band and there'd be a regular blues matinee in which it's not an open jam, but every week there's a guest that's asked to come. So you're getting players who know their stuff, they're playing blues, and you get that same sense of spontaneity. And so it's the same in that respect where you're able to just play without a script, but you're also able to, number one, specifically play blues and play with players who are pretty good.
Nice. So you say you've been doing the investigative journalism for about 10 years or so.
Hmm.
What are some of the things that you found during that 10 years that may have surprised you or that you didn't know or that you did know and it reinforced it for you?
One of the things that I find, and it's actually the reason why I was really compelled to do it in the first place, is I find that a lot of artists have been limited in a lot of ways when it comes to what's put on the record. And they're limited to the press release and the bio or the promo or the event that's getting, like promoted next. And a lot of artists only have the forum to let the music do the talking. And so I thought it's a really good idea to just give another avenue for artists to talk about why they do what they do, learn something that goes further than the press release and the bio. And that comes usually with a level of musicology. So you wouldn't be able to just read the press release and come up with basic questions. And so the thing that I find as a running theme is that a lot of things that are not strictly promoting the upcoming gig or the most recent album, they've never been put on the record before. And so for that reason, there's just a big gap between the product and the artist that's getting filled.
Okay, and do you see that as part of your job? Now you understand that, do you actively go out and try and fill that gap between the product and the artist?
Yes, most definitely I do, because what I do, I've been afforded the luxury of having a regular column in a worldwide publication. So what I tend to do is I tend to seek out artists that have an extremely accessible bio, or they're well known. And
Right.
so I don't have to spend the majority of a column reintroducing or introducing an artist to the reader. We can get past that, general knowledge, and we can get to the more in-depth questions. So yes, I very much see it as an initiative to let people know more, maybe discover more. These are the things that I didn't have access to when I discovered I love the blues. And yeah, you can trace the origins of the music, but it's such a personal experience for whoever's putting it out there. It's authentic. You don't really get to know much about what compelled somebody to do this. Why are they doing what they do? And so, yeah, to me, it's the main initiative. And I feel like filling that gap helps people connect to the genre in general.
It's always interesting to get under someone's skin and find out, like you say, find out some of that personal stuff, find out some of, like, so what is this about for you? Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. The last interview I did, as a matter of fact, you have to do your due diligence, and you have to study your musicology. Some artists I studied for a decade before I asked them for an interview, just to get to the stuff that has never been documented before.
Right.
And I find the more recognizable the artist, the harder the interview is, because there's a lot of stuff that's already out there. And
Yeah.
so, the last person I interviewed, it was the simplest question, but it had never been put on the record. And it is, why? Why do you play the blues? Never documented. So you go, okay, that's that piece that should be there, but it's missing. And in a way, it's not completely serving the artist to not know. You might know everything about the latest album, and you might know everything about, what shows are coming up next, but to know the general intention that's threaded through all of those efforts, I think there's something to be had in all of that, not just for the person listening, but for the artist as well.
That's a really interesting take, to offer that opportunity for the artist to express themselves in a way that they wouldn't normally. Yeah, like you say, it's not just for the audience, but actually there's an opportunity there for the artist to say something that they,
Yeah, most definitely. And it's something that, because people, especially in this day and age, a lot has to do with market and branding, and you have to make a living if you want to keep doing it. It's just the reality of the music business is, it's not called the music, it's called the music business. You have to be able to justify it. So lots of times, these are the things that get lost, is the purpose or the intention or the rationale, that insight. And I think in a music where it's not mainstream, people are not going to just, be subject to the blues and it become part of their inherent vernacular. They have to be interested in it. And I think part of that is knowing where someone's coming from. It's such a personal experience that I do believe everybody's trying to relate to. So if you know a little bit about why someone, maybe your favorite artist, why they're doing that, it can help with that connection. It can help strengthen the bond between the listener and the artist. And so that's the general thing that I find rings true all the time, is the personal stuff, the purpose, the intention is very rarely put on record.
Hmm. 2 seconds. Sorry. Right. Yes.
Okay.
That personal stuff, because you just touched on something there as well, that which is something that I'm wrestling a little bit with at the moment as well. This idea of mainstream music, popular music, if you will, not just pop music, the genre, but popular mainstream music, which is put out there to the masses. I'm wondering how much of that is more to do, and I'm theorizing that most of it is to do with the image and the brand rather than the actual music itself.
That is most definitely the way it is now, and I think we touched on that just a very little bit earlier, where it used to be that you put your music out there and it touched people, and then people wanted more of it. But now, and there's examples all over the place. But now it's, you need a brand, you need to be identifiable in what they call a 365-degree way. So this is why you see, a clothing line, or you name it. It's not just about the music. Sometimes it's about the choreography. Sometimes it's about the fashion trend. And so you need that brand before people will consume what you're doing a lot of times. So yeah, it's very much different than it was. And I think you see that in the longevity of an artist's career as well these days.
Right, in so much as it's quite condensed. It's, because the next image is coming along, the next trend, the next brand is coming along and taking over.
Yeah, well, commercially, the theory that 13-year-old girls rule the world in the music industry, and that's because 13-year-old girls, it's very important when they're coming of age with a little bit of their own identity, and their parents are usually in a position where they have a little bit of expendable income. So the 13-year-old little girl wants the latest, whatever it is, either song or brand or you name it. And that's what makes the business tick, according to what a lot of people have to say.
And I think, again, you've just hit a critical word there when you say identity, because I think music's always been aligned in some way or another with giving an identity to people. Yeah, and some of it's more fashionable and more easily packaged and pushed out, and some of it isn't so much so.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that defines the blues, as by its very nature, is that it's sharing the personal experience of somebody, whoever's singing it, and then it becomes identifiable or relatable to whoever's listening to it. And it's not about the flash, or it's not about the choreography. It's very rare you see something like that in blues. The music and the message, and the authenticity of that, that's what carries it through. And for that reason, I think that's one of the reasons why it isn't and won't be mainstream, which it was, but it's not.
Yeah.
And so it becomes, in my mind, it becomes more important for people to understand that experience just a little bit more, either through reading an article or identifying with lyrics, or making sure that when you're putting it out there live, it's somebody else's experience too.
I also wonder if there's something to do with, I think there's something here going on about quick fix gratification as well. Like, the blues is not that. Like, especially if you want to play it, or or like you say, if you want to understand it, it's not going to be a quick fix. You might need to read up, you might need to read an interview, you might need to listen to some blues. If you want to play it, although some people might say, well, it's three chords, it's not that hard. But like you say, to get that authentic feel, to make it actually sound like the blues and to feel like the blues, it's not a quick fix. It's not an instant gratification thing.
Yeah, to me, when people say it's three chords or 1 4 5 or however anybody blues are easy, however you want to say it, people do think that. I respectfully disagree because it's the simplest thing and maybe the hardest thing all at the same time.
Yeah.
Sit in your authentic self is as easy or as hard as a performer as you want it to be, and to be able to express it in a way that connects with somebody else in the traditional form of the art. It can be a difficult or complicated thing. It's not to be underrated, that's for sure.
Mm. Well, I mean, we've mentioned them quite a lot, so we won't only mention BB King, but we've also mentioned like Buddy Guy. So, um, or Albert King or Freddie King. These were great guitar players that you could hear the feeling, you could hear what they were trying to tell you, and they absolutely weren't shredders. They weren't the
That's right.
Steve Vais or the Joe Satrianis of their age. And more power to those guys. People like I love a bit of Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, but what you just said about it's both the simplest and the hardest thing at the same time. Like
Yeah.
like you said, I mean, you could play note for note a BB King lick, but can you actually make it sound like it has feeling in it?
Well, that's the feeling, right? Like nobody else is BB King. And that's what I mean by the voice. He said it. He's the guy who said it. And you might feel the same way, and you might be trying to say the same thing, but the way you're going to say it, if you're saying it authentically, it's going to be a little different. Yeah. And I think that's the part maybe a lot of people miss, is that it's easy to express yourself. Maybe a little harder to do it in a way that you want to, or maybe a little harder to do it in a way that everybody else understands, or maybe harder to do it in a way that is yours and yours alone. And then do it within the traditional identifiable art form that is the blues. It's a lot more complicated than people think.
A very interesting, complex contradiction, but an absolute truth. It's incredibly simple, but incredibly complex and challenging at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, you can take some of the methods for sure. It's the same concept as minor chords are sad and major chords are happy. You can play a major or minor pentatonic scale and it falls into those parameters, but what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And I know we referenced BB King, but that's the way it came out, and he did it. And it's, again, I never saw BB King call it in. And I'm sure a lot of people, if you go back into the history, the origins of blues music, there was no calling it in. They were just, the artists, the originators were just describing life, their personal experience with life. And, other people felt the same way. And that's the way it is now. The experience of blues players today is not the same, obviously. And that's what I was sort of touching on when I was saying, the last players of the last great migration, there's only Buddy Guy left.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the music will evolve. How can it not evolve? Everybody's experience is different. Just to touch on that, I was speaking to Kenny Blues Boss Wayne, and he'll be the first guy to tell you he doesn't travel the world playing blues. He travels the world being an ambassador to the blues. And I asked him, I said, what is it today? Are you a purist? Is it what's the blues of today versus the blues of the originators. Some people are purists and some people think it needs to grow. And he made an excellent quote based on that. And he said, well, it's really kind of like a train. And he said, it's the same thing. It's going to get you to the same place, but it's not built like it was 100 years ago. A little bit the same idea, but it doesn't run on coal and steam anymore. It runs a different way. So get you to where you're going. And I think what he was saying is, of course it evolves. It can still be the same thing. It just evolves. And, I thought about that. That's funk, that's rap, that's rock and roll.
Right.
Right. And so I thought, that's a pretty profound way of looking at it. So again, it's the simplest and the most difficult thing to wrap your head around.
Yes. Yeah, right. Yeah. So as we look at potential places that the blues could be going into the future, where do you see your journey into the future as well at the moment, both with your writing and with your singing and your songwriting?
Well, I think like any blues artist or any artist is compelled to do, the journey continues, and you hope that it can continue in ways that you're evolving and progressing, but maybe with the same intention. So there's more music to be made, there's more to learn, there's more to do, and I think if it can be done in a way that continues to relate to people, through whatever is my experience, and it's somebody else's too, then there's just no reason to stop.
Brilliant. Do you have tours coming up?
Well, there's always dates. Right now, the Erin McCallum band, is in the midst of its summer tour. So
Right.
yes, there's a few festivals and important dates in Ontario, Canada, and that will take up some time until autumn, maybe around September-ish, end of September, and then that's a good time of year to start looking at things like recording, and getting things ready to do it all over again.
So for those who don't know your music, where can they hear it at the moment?
Okay, well, a simple Google search of Erin McCallum will take anybody to hundreds and hundreds of results. If anybody wants to hear some music or download some music, it's available on all digital platforms. So that's your iTunes, your Spotify, wherever you can find, streaming or digital, you can find our stuff. And other than that, if people want to connect on social media, the place to go is the handle at Erin McCallum Music. It's public, but anybody can join. And anybody who lives in Canada or Ontario, come out to a show. I suppose also there's a website, erinmccallum.com, but that's not where people are looking for the live action and the easy access. So I'd say, Facebook's a good place to go. Instagram, same handle, at Erin McCallum Music. And so that's a good way to stay in touch and keep connected.
Brilliant. Erin, this has been enlightening, to say the least.
I really appreciate the conversation.
And let's stay in touch, because I want to be able to touch base with you and find out what you're doing and what's coming up for you and what you're doing. It sounds like like you say, you're finishing off a sort of summer tour at the moment, which will be finished sort of sometime around September.
Yep.
And then do you have plans to get back in the studio, or is that just the time when it would happen if it was going to happen?
Oh yeah, there's always albums to be recorded. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, I'm sitting in front of a whole lot of material as we speak, actually, books and books and books of material. Look at this. There's 2 books.
Oh, wow.
Full of songs. So yeah, there's definitely material to get into the studio. So that is the plan.
Nice.
Yeah,
Well, when you get back into the studio, let us know. I'd love to have an update about what you're doing and how you're doing it,
for
and the
sure.
process in there.
And
Um,
let me know when you get things up and running on your channels, and I will spread the word.
I really appreciate that, and I most certainly will do. But for now, uh, Erin, thank you very much. Please say goodbye to everyone.
Yes, you take care. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you found that as insightful as I did. It was great to be able to connect with Erin all the way over in Canada. The wonders of modern technology will never fail us. Right, as always, notices of blues jams coming up, and there's a lot, so stay tuned. As always, we start with the 5 regular jams that happen every week. So we've got the Colin Staples Blues Jam at the Navigation Inn, Castle Lock, Nottingham. That's 9 p.m. every Wednesday. We've got the Great British Blues Jam at the Temple of Arts and Music at 42 Newington Causeway in London, postcode SE16DR, every Saturday 3:30 onwards in the afternoon. We've got the Blue Lamp in Aberdeen at 121 Gallowgate. That's every Wednesday at 8 p.m. and the postcode there is AB251BU. And we have the 2 Backdoor Blues Jams, the one at the Orchard Inn, Hanover Place, Harbourside, Bristol, BS16XT, every Monday evening, 8:30 in the evening till 11 p.m. And the other Backdoor Blues Jam, which is at the Queen of Cups, which is 10 to 12 North Lode Street, Glastonbury, BA69JJ, every Sunday, 5 p.m. till 7 p.m. Right, we also have the Crediton Blues Jam in Crediton in Devon at the Red Deer. That's every second Sunday, 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. So by my reckoning, that's the 10th of August. So a little way to that one, but you can get ready for it. We have the Cricketers at 34 Carlton Place, Southampton in Hampshire. SO152DX is the postcode for that. That's every other Tuesday from 9 p.m. onwards. So according to my calculations, that should be the 6th of August. We've got the Magic Garden, again in London, 231 Battersea Park Road, SW114LG. That's the second Thursday of every month, and that's from 8 p.m. onwards. And according to my calculations, that should be the 8th of August. We've got the Blues Jam at Bletchley. That's at 105 to 111 Queensway in Milton Keynes, MK2 2DN. Wednesday the 7th of August at 7:30 p.m. We got the Lewis Road Inn, 158 Lewis Road, Brighton, on the first Sunday of the month, from 2 p.m. till 5 p.m. That should be the Sunday the 4th of August. And we got the Red House Blues Jam in Stourbridge, the first Wednesday of the month, 9 p.m. coming up on Wednesday the 7th of August. So as always, check those out for yourself to make sure they're still running, but this is the basic information that I've got. Now, if you've been enjoying what you've been watching and listening to on the Blues Jam podcast, then please make sure you hit subscribe. There should be a subscribe button somewhere here on the YouTube screen at the end of this video. And if you're listening to it on Spotify, make sure you press the follow button there so that you don't miss any further upcoming episodes. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'll see you all next Wednesday. Cheers. Bye-bye.